Dakato Association. We are from Cracow, Poland. The project is happening near Cracow in Nawojowa Góra, so that participants can actually see a bit more rural side of the country, and also to have a good training environment. Ania,
Kalina,
Dakato Association.
Merhaba, ben Rıfat Arıkan.
Merhaba, ben Mehmet Birgün.
Merhaba, ben Uğur Özkan.
We are from Turkey.
Zdravo, ja sam Kristina.
Zdravo, ja sam Katja. I wir sind aus Macedonia.
Hi, ich bin Sandra.
Hi, ich bin Jonas.
Hi, ich bin Tim.
Wir sind aus Deutschland.
Yay!
Cześć, jestem Natasza.
Ja jestem Komal.
Ja jestem Mateusz.
Polska!
Sunt Mihaela.
Numele meu e Bogdan.
Și eu sunt Zina.
Și suntem din România.
Melene Marina.
Melene Solomon.
Melene Antoni.
Melene Natasha.
Και είμαστε από την Κύπρο.
Hallo, ik ben Michel en ik kom uit Amsterdam.
Hi, ik ben Marleen, ik kom uit Delft.
Hi, en ik ben Johan en ik kom ook uit Amsterdam.
En wij komen
uit
Nederland!
Hi, I'm Zara.
I'm Christian.
And we're from the UK.
Ciao, il mio nome è Marta.
Ciao, io sono Roberto.
Ciao, sono Anita.
E noi veniamo dall'Italia.
Italia!
Okay, the main aim of our training course was to provide our participants with the tools they can use while they daily life and in their work. So there were quite a few methods that we try to implement with great help of our great trainer Max Press.
Conflict mapping is a tool that's normally not widely used in the youth work context, because it's a tool that comes from, you can say, maybe more serious contexts that work with the international conflicts with numerous stakeholders, conflict involving countries, international organizations. What I find interesting in that context is bringing this relatively complex tool into what people often think is simple, basic, interpersonal, inter-community conflicts. And then the audience eventually discovers that even though the tool is quite complex, it can be broken down into smaller, simple elements that can be applied to the youth work context, to intercultural conflicts, and eventually it also makes them understand that the conflicts that they face are not that simple, and they also involve multiple stakeholders, different sorts of influences, different sorts of alliances, different interdependencies between actors, and eventually, and that's what I saw here yesterday, that they allow them to better understand and better engage with conflicts with young people, whether they're intercultural or not. Because actually, in our workshop, we addressed primarily the issue of intercultural conflicts, but then eventually the group understood that intercultural conflicts will never have a single dimension. They usually have multiple dimensions, and besides culture, you have problems of structure, problems of power, problems of prejudice and stereotypes that are not only pertinent to culture. I would say that the aim is twofold. First, to introduce a tool that is relatively new to the audience, and in the case of our audience, for about 90% of participants, this was a new tool. And secondly, to empower them to engage and to better understand conflicts that they face in their work with young people at two levels. So first of all, to use it as a conflict transformation tool that they can use as youth workers, and they can use to analyze conflicts that they are themselves part of or they have the power to transform, but also to use it as a tool that they can then convey to young people and allow young people to better understand conflicts that they are surrounded by and to be more conscious in their everyday intercultural communication. Well, there are different variations of conflict mapping, but since we looked at it in a very specific context, I asked the group to focus on conflicts that would involve a layer of culture, or at least some sort of reference to cultural prejudice, to stereotypes, to cultural competence maybe. And then I asked them to focus on 3 main elements, because there's so much more to conflict mapping, but because of time constraints and also the fact that a lot of participants were not familiar with the tool, we focused on the 3 main elements, namely on actors, so main stakeholders in a conflict situation. Then we looked at relationships and dependencies, alliances between the actors, and we looked at the issues. So there was hardly ever a situation where only a single issue was at stake. So participants had to map out different issues that influenced conflict dynamics.
This is a quite new experience for me with the conflict mapping, because it's a new approach, more educational approach to the problem. I have never thought it's quite hard to understand one conflict and what influences that conflict and for which reasons that conflict exists. So this method of conflict mapping helped me a lot to learn about the relations between the actors. And I learned so far about the relations and how one conflict is made, how it can be influenced by somebody. So I think that it can help me a lot in real-life activities, but also when I'm working something.
The aim of the activity is to make you engaged with the conflict, and then do brainstorm as much as possible, and then come to a compromise. I think the aim was that. I learned once more to listen to the people, okay? To have eye contact while speaking over an issue, a hot issue, okay? Again, I developed my personal communicative skills.
How we felt about it? Well, it was a bit difficult at first because we had a lot of the conflicts that we chose. They were a bit complicated. And we had like 7, 8 actors and a lot of relations, but they were mixed because we didn't know how to define those relations. For example, between 2 countries, some of us thought they were like interrupted relations, some of us thought it was a conflict or something like that. Well, let's do a conflict mapping and we go to them and show them, see, this is the relation, you can do this to improve it, you can do that, and it could be useful.
Debate was the next step in the whole process of understanding how to engage with conflicts, because initially we started with almost a lab or an artificial conflict that we created, and it had very controlled variables, so we could pretty much guess which way it's going to go and how participants will react. Now, once we established that there were 5 principal ways or 5 principal types of reactions that can be applied to a conflict situation, we decided to take it a step further and to present the group with a dilemma that's actually quite current, and that pertains to the role of religion in public space and the role of religious symbols in education. So we wanted to make it both close to their context, because we're talking about youth workers and people who have a lot to do with everyday delivery of education, but also to make it universal and sort of pan-European, because as we well know, discussion about religion's public profile and visibility in European countries is very present across countries represented at the course, including Turkey, Netherlands, United Kingdom, Italy and Poland. So in the process they had an opportunity to put themselves in another person's shoes, so they had an opportunity to represent not only their views but the views of groups and organizations that they found it difficult to identify with, but it was part of the challenge and also part of the reward, being able to look at the problem and at a complex one from the perspective of somebody you don't agree with. And they also had an opportunity to further discuss the situation in their own countries. So we divided the debate in 2 parts. First, the simulation part, where they had to fit within a certain role, and then the second part where they had an opportunity to compare the importance of those debates in their own countries. were given an activity. We were split into 4 groups. We had this this issue that we had to talk about, and each group had a different position, let's say, about how to handle a conflict. Well, I guess the difficulty would be, for example, the topic was the banning of religious symbols in schools, and I was representing the women's rights group, which supported this, even though personally I feel that we shouldn't have like that kind of ban. Through the activity I had to support something which wasn't my own personal belief, so that was kind of a bit of a challenge. I've had similar experiences with Model United Nations, where I had to represent other countries for policies, which again you have to support something different, and it's a pretty nice experience to go through, because you can also see how other people think, how other people cope with certain topics.
I think it was really cool because it makes you, you are obliged to say something that maybe it's not your opinion, but you have to support it. And I had previous experiences in debate matches, because in Spain they have these debate matches as national sport. And so I studied there for 6 years and I had it, and I am a lawyer practitioner, so argumenting on something I don't really believe in is my thing. So it wasn't so difficult for me, but I think it's really, really important, and the risk is always that at a certain point it becomes personal and your personal opinions and thoughts comes out. But it's really important to also in the future, because when you debate with someone about anything, it reminds you to put yourself in their position, and so to not become too personal and to not get angry, but just to try to understand other people's opinion and to learn from it, because when you're not supporting your personal opinion, maybe you don't get too much into it.
I like the group process because, well, the assignment was very clear and very black and white, so please don't do it. And you could see the process in the group. Somebody said like, oh, we should do this and this and this. And other people would comment to that. But there's always somebody actually standing up and saying like, no, and now we should do this because somebody is checking the time. Others really would like to fulfill the task, and others would like to make the real detailed and from every viewpoint, look at it from every viewpoint. So yeah, that group process I thought was very exciting.
We looked at different conflict transformation tools. Swapping Cultures Initiative is one such tool. The tool was originally developed by a British charity organisation called Minorities of Europe to work with young people in intercultural contexts in schools across the Midlands in the UK. The background to the development of the tool has to do with some rather sad developments in the north of England, so the riots of Bradford and Oldham in 2001. So we started with an introduction to cultural diversity and history of immigration in the UK, and the background behind some of the riots that happened in the north of England in 2001. They did not have to do only with migration, but there was an important piece of the background story behind them. Now, later on, I also explained the importance of immigration in the UK's public debate and how it's perceived by the public, how those perceptions are influenced by the media, by government organisations, by civil society organisations and by citizens groups. Further on, we looked at the sample Swapping Cultures workshop. It was a simplified format because we only had a limited amount of time, and in that time we engaged participants in the so-called face-to-face phase of Swapping Cultures, where they had the opportunity to talk to somebody who was not from their country, who was maybe not from their cultural circle, and they had an opportunity to explore each other's cultures, but also each other's personalities, languages, things to do with nationality, things to do with their age, things to do with family, different sort of relationships that they were engaged in. And once they've done that, they were faced with a number of challenging questions that related to the role of intercultural dialogue, the role of migration, the role of cultural diversity in their everyday life.
Culture swapping was about talking to one other person from another country, of course, not the same country. And we were supposed to get to know each other better. And like the first questions were quite easy, but then they were like getting more challenging and more intimate. So we get to know the person much better. And after this, we found another couple to talk about who we have met and what we, I don't know, got to know about the other person. And I talked to the Dutch girl. I thought we were pretty the same because we're neighbor countries. And we had quite similar ideas about what the questions were, about the answers.
I really enjoyed this method. We got a questionnaire with 8 questions. It started with a really simple question about what color does fit our personality and why, and it finished about more complicated questions about culture, conflicts, and things really connected to the topic of the project.
I actually have a plan, so I'll definitely be using the swapping culture in my workplace. I work in an intercultural, multicultural town with lots of multicultural people, mostly women. So I have a plan with my work project to start a interfaith or intercultural morning session, like a coffee morning, but talking about different faith groups and different cultures. So what do we all bring to this world? We are all unique individuals, not equal. We are equal, we should have equal opportunities, but we are all individual, unique individuals. So to discuss that, I would basically use this tool. Maybe the same questions or maybe adapt it so that the women are less English spoken. So maybe adapt it, simplify the questions and get them opportunity to know maybe from an Indian background versus speaking to a Bengali background. Even though people feel that it's the same continent, but also it's a very different culture background, and sometimes people think Indians and Bangladeshis and Pakistanis have conflicts. So it'd be good, interesting to see what exactly they think and they feel about each other's cultures.
So also important was to create and maintain a solid network between organizations. Yeah, for some of them met again. So one of the outcomes of the project was actually to create the ideas of projects, and some of them will be most probably applied within the deadline in October. So that's also the very important part of the project. That one thing is to gain the tools, but the other is to create a space where you can actually use them.